one of my earliest memories on the East Coast was getting to celebrate the flower communion with the first parish in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And a college junior at the time, I had relocated to the area to do some studying and research a few years before I would actually start my time there at Harvard. Before a whole summer that I would spend in the library among stacks of books, I walked through the doors that first Sunday in New England to a sanctuary filled with blossoms and bright colors. Though I was a total stranger, the UUs there at the first parish in Cambridge welcomed me as one of their own, and they even provided me with a flower because, I had forgotten to bring one. And in fact, I still forgot to bring one today. Old habits die hard. But while this wasn't the first time that I had been to a flower communion, it's still a ceremony and ritual that remains one of my favorites, and perhaps a favorite to some of you. It has lessons for all of us on what it means to come together as a community, bringing our skills and talents, our excitements and our wonderings, and yes, even those rough edges and imperfections. Amen. The flower communion is a tradition of celebrating the value and importance of each of our human lives, the gorgeous colors and expressions of our own personalities, hopes, and passions. And much like we celebrate pride, it's a ritual that celebrates the flourishing through difference, showing us that great beauty abides when we are not all the same together. And in fact, the vases and our setting is not complete without these contrasting colors, petals, leaf sizes, and stems. The flower communion shows us that beauty is found right where we are, right as we are, in all that we are, and what each of us brings to community. And on this Flower Sunday, where many of us have joined both also online and also here in person, we have much to be grateful for from the growths and challenges of our first year of ministry together. Additionally, I think I speak for all of us when I say that it is a miracle and a blessing to be here now in our sanctuary with so many of us after so many months of distance and being apart from one another. It truly feels like a miracle that we can be together today and celebrate this. And our celebration of the flower communion as a moment of celebrating our differences is something that you've heard a little bit about as something that's not new. It's a tradition that's rooted to the core of its history and also a part of our own faith. You see, the other cool part about celebrating the flower communion on my first Sunday in New England was celebrating at the first congregation, as Mary Ann mentioned, where it was celebrated in the United States in 1940, the first parish in Cambridge. Originally, it comes from the Unitarians in Czechoslovakia who first celebrated this practice. The Reverend Norbert Čapek, the minister of the church in Prague, wanted to share with his community this ritual that celebrated beauty and abundance found in nature. And meeting out of a building that actually hardly looked like a church at the time, the new congregation needed some new sense of sacredness. Čapek found that what really mattered wasn't that they met in this ornate building or the sanctuary with all of its trappings or decorations. Instead, the people were ultimately what mattered most in any community. And while our flowers are symbols of our own individuality, our own uniqueness and beauty, they point to something else that Čapek was insistent when we celebrated the flower communion. For him, it was just as important to celebrate the whole bouquet, just as much as we celebrate each individual flower. The real message found in the flower communion is not just how we are different and unique from one another. While we bring many flowers through our doors, the real gift is the gift of communion itself, the gifts found in gathering as a community. The knowledge that no matter who we are and what we look like, no matter how we express ourselves, our different sized petals and stems, our colors, shapes, and personality flavors, what's most special is how we care for one another in spite of all of that. The bouquet itself becomes more important than just each individual flower, and even though there may be flowers that are wilted, some that are less vibrant or even smaller than some of the others, we know the value that each flower brings to our mix. The lesson in the flower communion is that the whole bouquet is what matters most, not just each unique flower. The nature of what it means to be a community together, in whatever shape, form, comes back to this single principle, that the beauty comes from each one of us and what each one of us brings by being together. The flower communion is, in my opinion, one of the best expressions of what it is that we do and believe as Unitarian Universalists. It's a covenant that we make with one another each year as we bring our blossoms and stems and place them here in these vases, blessing them with the faith that we are meant and born to be different from one another, and that this is something ultimately to be celebrated. UUCGT itself has flourished throughout this time because each one of you has helped our congregation to live out this promise. You know why community is so important and why it matters that we continue to gather. That we continue to gather as one collective bouquet of beautiful and wondrous people who all care for one another. And so this Sunday, I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for all of the ways that we've remained connected despite the challenges of this past year, through Zoom, through YouTube, through our being separate. And likewise, I'm grateful for the compassion and warmth that you've shown me and also that you've shown one another, even in moments when our differences are highlighted or we've even had conflict with one another. After this year of shared ministry, I want to say thank you for living out this promise that we now affirm through gathering our flowers into these communal vases. Thank you for living into our values of compassion and connection. Our knowledge and care for each other and each one of us must also extend for the caring of the whole. We celebrate each other this day, and today we celebrate you, the irreplaceable, intricate you that you have shared with us all along. And so I invite us now to just pause and simply look at these gathered flowers up before us. This abundance of flowers and colors, all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Hold on your mind and on your heart the many things that you are grateful for from this past year. The gratitude we have for one another and what each of us brings to community. Having shared in this ritual together and having shared in our collective beauty, I recognize these flowers as blessed. And may these flowers remind us of the uniqueness of each one of us and that powerful, sacred something that happens when we come together in community. May it be so, amen, and blessed be. So in a moment, we will invite you, just as we did before, to come forward to take and receive a different flower than you brought with you this morning. Though you are invited, of course, to take a different one than the one that you brought with you. I won't tell if you happen to take one that you really like. For those of you that are seated with us and maybe have a bit of a challenge coming up, if you'd simply raise your hand to let us know that you'd like a flower to be brought to you, we can be sure to bring you a flower as well. And a point that I didn't share earlier too is that we have some virtual flowers up here on our screen that those in our community who are farther away from us or those who couldn't be here with us this morning, they've submitted some of these flower photos for you to look at too in a form of our virtual flower communion. So we'll take a moment to go row by row again, welcoming folks on each side to come forward and receive a different flower. And if you would do that same practice of coming out this way and then wrapping around toward the center, and those of you on this side coming around this way and wrapping toward the center. So we will go ahead and start. Oh, you got it. We'll go ahead and get some flowers going.